The day I was born was wrapped in sunlight, warm, clear, almost too beautiful. My parents believed that day was a sign. They had decided to change their lives entirely, sell what little we had, and leave behind the land that had disappointed them for years. They bought a small seaboat with whatever savings they'd scraped together, hoping for a future in another country. A clean slate. A second chance. They smiled at each other like they hadn't in years, hope finally warming their tired hearts. My mother held me like I was the very symbol of their new beginning. I was barely a few weeks old, unaware of the weight I carried in their dreams. We set out from the harbor as the sun dipped gently into the sea, bathing our little boat in gold. They laughed that evening, they really did. My father danced clumsily with my mother, rocking the boat more than the waves did, and my mother hummed a lullaby. I think I can still hear in my bones. But the sea never promised anything. By midnight, the clouds had swallowed the stars. Wind turned the air into knives, and rain poured so thick it felt like the sky was breaking apart. The waves came like monsters, lifting us and then slamming us down again, mercilessly. People screamed, wood cracked. The sail tore like paper. I don't remember much. I was too young, but the story has lived in me ever since. It comes back in dreams, in flashes, in the way my heart races during storms. My mother held me tight to her chest, her voice trembling as she whispered, "It'll be all right, my child. I promise." I believe she meant it. I believe she would have held on until her last breath if it meant saving me. She wrapped me in a cloth, kissed my forehead like she was sealing me with everything she had left, and gently placed me on a floating wooden plank torn from the boat's side. I cried, loud and terrified, my tiny fingers reaching for her as the sea pulled everything under. I never saw my parents again. Most babies are cradled to sleep. I was cradled by wreckage, sobbing into the thunder while death surrounded me in every direction. I should have died. But someone heard me, a mermaid. Far from the chaos, watching from the deep shadows beneath the storm, a queen of the sea, Taz they call her, felt something crack in her ancient heart when she heard my cries. She had seen shipwrecks before. Hundreds, thousands. But something about that night, about me, pulled her forward. Perhaps it was mercy, or maybe it was a longing she could never speak aloud. Taz had no child of her own. She had long given up hope. She surfaced, sleek and shimmering in the stormlight, and found me barely breathing, clinging to the plank like a ghost. Without a word, she removed the sacred necklace around her neck, a glowing ancient artifact of the merfolk, and placed it around mine. The moment it touched my skin, my cries softened. I could breathe, not air, but water. She took me under, gently, through the quiet below the chaos, deeper, safer, into a world I would one day call home but never truly belong to. When we reached the hidden Mermaid city, she hid me under a veil and took me to her palace. Her husband, King Rashid, was away at war, still nursing centuries of hatred toward the human world. Taz knew she was risking everything, but she didn't care. I was not a threat. I was just a child. When the king returned and found me, a human child in his kingdom, he erupted. His fury was like a tidal wave, but then I laughed. A strange, helpless laugh, reaching out and grabbing his finger. Something about that moment unraveled him. Even kings are no match for an infant's trust. So he agreed, reluctantly. But there were conditions. I would live as one of them, wear a tail enchanted by sea magic to hide my legs. I would never know my true identity, never learn the story of my human parents. To the world, I would be their daughter. And to myself, I would be a secret. So they named me Oriella, the sea-born child, the princess who arrived from the wreckage of a forgotten night. But even as I was cradled in love, dressed in silks of kelp and coral, fed songs and stories by the mermaids who raised me, something deep in me knew I did not belong. And that knowledge would one day shatter the only home I had ever known. The ocean raised me, but the silence of my past echoed louder with each passing year. I grew up surrounded by wonders most would only dream of. The underwater kingdom sparkled like a living jewel. Coral castles with winding glass tunnels, fish that sang lullabies as they swam, jellyfish lighting the dark like floating stars. Magic pulsed through everything. I was their miracle, the human child who had become the sea's secret. The merfolk accepted me. They sang to me, played with me, celebrated my birthdays with seashell crowns and pearls braided into my hair. But none of them looked like me. Their tails glimmered in hues of sapphire and silver. Their bodies moved with natural elegance in water. Me? I wore a tail that always felt too tight, always slightly off. Swimming was never easy. It was survival dressed as grace. Every dive reminded me I was pretending. I was performing. Still, I smiled. I laughed. I didn't want to disappoint Taz. She had saved me. She loved me fiercely. She taught me how to sing in the language of whales and dance with the currents. But sometimes I'd catch her staring at me, not with pride, but with sadness, as if she knew I would one day leave her. As if she was already grieving a goodbye I hadn't even spoken. The older I got, the more curious I became. Why did I have legs? Why was I different? Where did I come from? Every time I asked Taz about my father or the night she found me, her face fell like a storm cloud. "You are ours now, Oriella," she'd say gently but firmly. "That's all that matters." But it wasn't enough. Not for me. There were whispers too. The older mermaids spoke of monsters with legs, creatures from the surface world who ruined oceans, destroyed reefs, and waged war on the sea. They said humans were selfish, greedy, dangerous. I heard these stories while I swam with my fake tail and human lungs hidden behind magic. I listened, quiet and trembling, knowing they were talking about me. If they knew what I was, would they still love me? One day, while exploring the palace library, I found a secret chamber behind a collapsed shelf of ancient scrolls. The room smelled of salt and dust, untouched by time. Inside, I found a chest filled with forbidden knowledge, books, sketches, artifacts from the human world. I saw pictures of people with legs like mine. Some smiling, some crying, some building towers that reached the sky, some holding babies. A crumpled, water-stained photo tucked between the pages of a ruined journal. It showed a man and a woman, young and glowing, holding a tiny baby wrapped in blue. The baby had my eyes. I sat there frozen as everything inside me unraveled. That baby was me. I wasn't just different. I was a lie. The truth was overwhelming. My heart thudded in my chest like a warning drum. I wanted to run to Taz, to demand answers, to scream at her for hiding this from me, but I knew she had done it to protect me. So instead, I wrote her a note. Just 4 words, "I need to know," and then I left. I swam away from the only home I'd ever known, beyond the safe borders of the mermaid city, into the deep and endless blue. I didn't know where I was going. I just followed the ache in my chest. I traveled for days, hiding from predators, clinging to drift currents, guided only by instinct. And then I found it. A shipwreck. Its bones were scattered across the ocean floor like a graveyard. Timbers broken, sails shredded, everything silent except for the occasional creak of old wood shifting. Something in me stilled. I knew this place. Not with memory, but with something deeper, like muscle remembered it. Like my soul recognized its own beginning. I searched through the ruins, my heart pounding. And there, among the soaked luggage and tangled nets, I found a locket. Inside was a photo. The same man and woman, the same baby. Me, it was real. I had a family. I had once belonged to someone. They had died, and I had forgotten them. I curled up in a corner of the wreck, holding the locket against my chest as sobs escaped me in waves. Salt water filled my lungs, but it didn't matter. I was part of it now. The ocean, the grief, the truth. I wept for the life I never knew, the love that died before I could remember it, and for the strange, aching loneliness that had followed me like a shadow all my life. I cried for my mother, for my father, for the baby they had loved so deeply, they gave up everything trying to save. And I cried for the girl I had become, caught between worlds, caught between truths, caught in a story she didn't ask for. When I finally left the wreck, I didn't look back. I knew what I had to do. I had to find the surface. I had to walk on land, even if it meant breaking the only heart that had ever claimed me as its own. Breaking the surface was like being born all over again. The sun hit my face for the first time in years. Warm, blinding, merciless. My lungs, used to the silence of the deep, gasped. I didn't know how to breathe up here. Not properly, not without pain. The air was too dry, too loud. My chest ached with every inhale, but I kept going. The beach I surfaced near was quiet, nearly empty. A private cove, maybe. Waves lapped against the shore like they were urging me on. I clutched the soaked locket to my chest, every heartbeat echoing inside my head like a drumbeat. You belong here. You belong here. I reached the sand and collapsed, coughing, trembling. My body shivered under the weight of air and gravity. For years, my legs had been hidden, unused, clumsy. Now they were real, visible. They felt foreign like borrowed limbs. I ripped off the enchanted tail that had bound me my entire life. And for the first time, I saw myself clearly. Naked, human. A truth that stung more than the salt water in my wounds. I tried to stand, fell, tried again. I walked like a newborn deer, shaky, confused, but determined. I would walk this land. I would find out who I was, even if it killed me. I didn't know where to go or what to say. My skin burned from the sun, and the wet cloth clung to me like shame. People passed by at a distance, laughing, playing, completely unaware that a girl was being reborn in silence right beside them. And then I saw him. Not a god, not a prince, just a boy. He had sand on his knees, a towel over his shoulder, and hair that curled at the ends from seawater. His eyes scanned the beach with casual curiosity until they landed on me. He stared. I froze. Our gazes held for what felt like an eternity. Then he walked toward me, slow, cautious, but without fear. I expected suspicion, mockery, or questions. But instead, he just tilted his head and asked, "Are you okay?" His name was Maisie. His voice was warm, low, full of something I hadn't expected from a stranger. Kindness. The kind that doesn't ask questions right away. The kind that lets you exist even when you can't explain yourself. I mumbled something about being lost. He offered me a towel and a bottle of water. I didn't drink it. I didn't know how to trust it. But I accepted the towel, clutching it tightly, and whispered, "A thank you." He sat next to me, like it was the most natural thing in the world, like I wasn't a girl who had just escaped the deep. Like I wasn't a mermaid pretending to be human. He told me stories about the island, where to get good food, the hidden waterfalls, the quiet trails. He said he worked as a lifeguard, loved the sea, but always felt like something was missing when he looked out at it. I didn't know how to answer him. I wanted to tell him everything, that I came from the ocean, that my parents died in a storm, that a mermaid queen raised me, that I didn't belong anywhere. But instead, I just nodded and said, "I like the sea too." For the next few days, Maisie became my guide. He taught me to walk properly, to climb stairs, to eat food without looking like I was dissecting it. He laughed when I got overwhelmed by vending machines or forgot that shoes were a thing. I learned quickly. He said I was curious. I said nothing. Every time he touched my arm or smiled at me, something inside me ached. A human ache, a longing. It wasn't like the ocean, endless and heavy. It was sharp, light, dangerous. He didn't know who I really was, and I was afraid that once he did, he'd leave. But the sea had marked me. It followed me in my dreams, in the pull behind my ribs, in the way I could still hear whale songs when I was alone. I knew I couldn't hide forever. That soon the sea would come for me again, and that when it did, it might not let me go. Days passed like whispers, soft and swift. Maisie's presence slowly became something I depended on, like breath, like sunlight. Every moment with him was filled with strange beauty and unfamiliar warmth that made me both safe and deeply afraid. I laughed with him more than I ever had beneath the waves. I learned how to ride a bike, though I crashed into bushes more than I rode. He found it hilarious. He called me a wild fish on wheels. I didn't correct him. I liked it. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the ocean. I felt it in my veins, in my dreams, in the sorrow that curled around the edges of my smile. I missed Taz's gentle hands brushing my hair, Alora's lullabies echoing through the coral halls, the silent embrace of the deep. I missed the life that raised me. But Maisie, he had unknowingly started stitching something back together inside me, something broken, something human. One night, we sat on the beach beneath the stars, the fire crackling between us. The wind tangled our hair. He was telling me about his mother, how she passed when he was little, and how his father had raised him alone. His eyes went soft as the ocean to the ocean when he said her name. I watched him, every word he spoke lighting something inside me. I wanted to tell him then, but I was scared. I was so scared. So instead I reached in my bag and took out the locket. I hadn't shown it to anyone before. The photo inside was fading, but you could still see my tiny face. My mother's arms, my father's smile. This, I said softly, was my family. He leaned in, eyes focused, gentle. They look like they loved you so much. Oh, they did, I whispered. Oh, they died. In a storm. I'm sorry, he said, voice heavy with genuine sorrow. That must have been... He survived, I said, cutting through the memory before it swallowed me. Someone found me and raised me. But I've never stopped wondering who I really am, what I'm supposed to be. Maisie looked at me for a long moment, then did something I never expected. He took my hand. No judgment. No questions, just silence and a shared grief. But the silence didn't last. That night, the waves began to change. I felt it before I saw it. A shift in the current, a call from the deep. Something wasn't right, and then I heard it. Whale song, but not just any. It was Alora's voice carried on water and wind, a message only I could understand. Come back. Danger Bruise, we need you. Panic surged through me. What danger? What had happened? I stood suddenly. Maisie watched me, confused. Are you okay? No, I breathed. I have to go now. His brows furrowed. Go where? It's late. I looked at him, my heart breaking even before the goodbye left my lips. You have to trust me. Please, I'll come back. I promise. He stood too, worry thick in his eyes. But tell me what's going on, Ori. You're scaring me. I can't explain. Not yet. Why not? Because I'm not who you think I am. Because I have a tail, not legs. Because if I tell you, you'll look at me like the others do. Instead, I just shook my head and whispered, oh, please believe in me. Then I ran. I ran through the sand, heart pounding, lungs burning, tears stinging my eyes. I reached the water and dove in, shedding my human clothes as the sea embraced me once again. The necklace pulsed against my chest and my tail shimmered back into existence. I swam faster than I ever had. My body remembered its truth. The ocean welcomed me back like a lost child. But I didn't feel like a child anymore. I felt like someone who had two hearts and didn't know which one would break first. As I neared the Mermaid city, I saw the signs of change. Guards swimming at full speed, currents disturbed, dark shapes looming in the distance. The glowing coral that once lit our world now pulsed like a warning. Alora was waiting for me at the gate, her face pale with fear. Oriella, she said, grabbing my hands. I think the tides. You came back. Oh, what happened? I asked, breathless. She looked around, voice dropping low. War secret is no longer safe. The weight of her words sank into me like cold stone. Me secret? I whispered, my voice shaking. What do you mean? Alora looked older in that moment, like time had finally caught up to her. The council knows. Someone saw you on land, walking. My stomach twisted. Who? A patrol scout. He followed you one day. He didn't tell us, Oriella. He told the king. King Rashid. The one who had only agreed to let me live under the condition I remained hidden, tail-bound and ignorant of my origin. I could already imagine his fury. His betrayal. Maybe I had betrayed them. Maybe I'd broken a sacred vow without meaning to. But still, I hadn't been wrong to go. I didn't mean to put anyone in danger, I said softly. You never meant to, Alora whispered. But your truth is dangerous no matter your intention. The guards flanked us, urging us toward the palace. I felt every pair of eyes on me as we passed through the shimmering streets. Murmurs rippled in our wake like poison in the water. I didn't need to understand every word to feel the judgment, the fear. She's legs, she's not one of us. What else has she lied about? I was the sea's miracle once. Now I was its threat. The palace doors opened, and King Rashid stood at the center of the hall, his face hard as carved stone, his robe flowing like seaweed in the current. He didn't need to speak. His fury was already echoing through the chamber. "You defied the conditions of your life?" he thundered, voice trembling with rage. "You walked among humans. You revealed yourself." "Favi didn't reveal anything," I cried. "I stayed hidden. I only wanted to understand who I am, as you are a secret," he roared. "You are a dangerous anomaly, a human wrapped in a lie, living in a kingdom that was never meant to hold you. Do you know what they're saying now? That I raised a spy, that I'm protecting one of them." I looked at Alora begging for help, for defense, but even she seemed unsure now. "We didn't betray anyone," I said softer. I wanted to know why I felt empty my entire life. Why I look like no one else. Why I cry when no one's around. A silence fell over the court. My voice cracked as I continued. "I miss my mother, my real one. The one who died holding me as the sea tore her away. I miss a father I can't even remember. I miss something I never had the chance to hold." King Rashid turned away, his shoulders tight. "And what of us? Are we nothing? We saved you. We raised you." "I know," I whispered, "and I love you for it. Yeah. But love is in a cage. I didn't leave to hurt you. I left to heal me." The court was silent. Then a new voice broke it. "She's not wrong," Alora said, stepping forward. "We have hidden her. We forced her into a lie for our own comfort, but Oriella has only ever acted with love." King Rashid's eyes flared. "Will you defend her, knowing what this will do to our kingdom?" Defend our daughter," Alora said, louder now, bolder than I'd ever seen her, because she has more courage than all of us." There was another pause. Then Rashid turned his gaze back to me. "You can no longer live in secrecy," he said. "The court demands exile." The word hit like a blade. "No," Alora whispered. Please, exile," he repeated. "Let her go to the world she longs for. Let her live among humans if that's what she chooses. But she may not return. She cannot have both." I felt like I was drowning all over again. I looked at Taz, at the queen who had raised me, who had sung me to sleep, whose hands had held me through my fears. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded slowly. "You must choose," she said gently. "Now." And in that moment, the choice felt like a punishment. A heart divided by a blade. I thought of Maisie's smile. I thought of the fire on the beach, of laughter and footsteps and sunlight on skin. Then I thought of Elora's lullabies, of swimming through kelp forests, of everything that had ever made me feel safe. And I realized something painful. No matter what I chose, I would lose the other. My heart cracked, but my voice was clear. I want to go back. No words could soften the silence that followed. Elora's face broke first. The queen of the ocean, strong, regal, fierce now, looked like any other mother, devastated. Still, she nodded, holding back the scream that wanted to tear from her throat. "You are my daughter," she said, voice trembling. "No matter where the tide takes you." King Rashid didn't speak. His silence was his judgment. He turned his back on me and walked away. I stood there, surrounded by a court that once celebrated my every breath and now watched me like I was a shameful stain. The sea, once my cradle, now tasted like grief. The exile was immediate. No ceremonies, no goodbyes, no tears allowed. Just a command and the finality of banishment like a blade drawn from stone. Alora met me at the border of the kingdom with a small satchel woven from kelp. Inside were a few enchanted shells, a piece of her favorite coral harp, and the necklace, her necklace, the one that let me breathe underwater. "This, you must take it," she said, pressing it into my hand. "So you can survive if you ever need to return to the water. But know this, Oriella. If you cross the city gates again, it will be as a stranger. You cannot come home. Not as things are." I wanted to scream, then change them, but I only nodded. She kissed my forehead, a trembling kiss soaked in salt and sorrow, and whispered, "I will always hear you, even when I cannot answer." and just like that, she was gone. I left the kingdom with nothing but a satchel and my broken pieces swimming through the currents like they'd forgotten my name. The sea no longer welcomed me. It just tolerated me. When I finally reached the surface again, it was dusk. The world above felt louder now, too full of choices, of noises, of futures I didn't ask for. But it was mine now, the only one I had. I made my way back to the beach where I had last seen Mermaid. I was soaked, exhausted, trembling, but determined. He was there, sitting on the lifeguard tower, watching the sea like it had stolen something from him. When he saw me, he leapt down so fast he nearly fell, running toward me, sand spraying under his feet. I opened my mouth to speak, but he didn't wait for words. He threw his arms around me. For a moment, I just stood there, stiff, afraid this wasn't real. But then I broke. My arms wrapped around him. I sobbed into his chest and he held me tighter, not asking, not demanding, just being. When I finally pulled away, I met his eyes. "There's something I need to tell you," I said. He nodded. "I'm not like you," I said quietly. I wasn't born on land. I wasn't even supposed to be alive, so I told him. Everything. The shipwreck, the mermaid queen, the fake tale, the exile, the truth. He listened without interrupting. No laughter, no disbelief, just silence, and then a long breath. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that I fell in love with a literal mermaid?" I blinked. "You, what?" He smiled sheepishly. "I kind of thought you were weird, but I couldn't stop thinking about you. And now, well, you're even weirder." "But I'm not going anywhere." I stared at him, stunned. "You're not afraid?" Terrified," he said with a laugh, but also awestruck, heartbroken, amazed. "I can't go back," I said. "I'm not welcome anymore." "Then stay," he whispered. "We'll make a new home together." It was too much, too kind, too sudden, but I nodded. Because even though I had just lost everything again, in his arms, I felt something that almost resembled hope. We walked back to his small home near the beach. That night, I curled up in a real bed for the first time. No swaying water, no kelp blankets, just silence, warm sheets, and a boy who sat beside me until I fell asleep. But even in sleep, the sea called me, and I feared it would never stop. The days that followed were quiet, but underneath that calmness was a soft, persistent ache, like the low hum of a storm waiting far out at sea. Living on land wasn't like visiting it. It was hard. Everything was different. How food tasted, how clothes clung to my body when they dried, how air moved around me constantly, whispering strange noises I wasn't used to, and most of all, how lonely it felt even in the company of people. But Maisie tried. He tried so hard. He cooked me warm meals that made my stomach twist with unfamiliar hunger. He took me to markets and introduced me to people who smiled too easily, who asked too many questions. He found me clothes soft and loose, so I wouldn't feel like I was being strangled by seams and sleeves. He gave me space when I needed it. And still, I felt like a foreign object in his world. Sometimes I would just stand at the shoreline, my toes sinking into wet sand, staring at the horizon. I'd listen, not for seagulls, not for waves, but for her, Alora, for a song I would never hear again. "I can see it hurts," Maisie said one night as we watched the fire crackle on the shore. "It doesn't just hurt," I whispered, "it haunts." He took my hand, his thumb gently stroking the edge of my palm. "What can I do?" "And nothing," I said. "This is mine to carry." And he nodded, not pretending to understand, just being there. One morning, as we walked the cliffs, I found a piece of driftwood with strange carvings etched into it. Mer writing, old and cracked. It was a warning. Monsters rise when truths are buried. It was from the deep. Something was coming, something they blamed me for. I felt it in the tides and the way the wind shifted. I dreamed of crashing waves and screaming whales, of the city I left behind drowning in silence. I didn't tell Maisie. I was afraid, not for myself, but for him. I knew what merfolk could do when they were afraid. I had seen how quickly love turned to fear and fear to cruelty. If they saw him as the reason I chose exile, if they believed I had betrayed them to live among humans, there was no telling what they might do. The necklace Alora had given me began to grow warm against my chest, like a pulse, a heartbeat, a call. Then one night I heard her voice, not in a dream, not in a memory, but in the waves. Oriola, danger comes. He must not stay near the water. I stumbled back, the voice echoing inside me. Maisie rushed out, seeing me pale and breathless. What is it? He asked, studying me. They're coming, I whispered. I don't know who or why. But I think they believe I've broken some law, maybe more than one. And if they come here, I couldn't finish. He held my face between his hands. We leave. Now. No, I said firmly. You can't run from the sea. It will find us anywhere. He looked scared then, not for himself. For me. We didn't sleep that night. We packed what little we had. But part of me knew it was pointless. They didn't need roads to find me. They didn't need doors. At dawn, the tide rose higher than ever before. And from the ocean, rising like phantoms from the deep, they came. Not Alora, not Rashid, but the council, draped in dark kelp armor, spears carved from obsidian shells, eyes like the abyss. They didn't speak as they moved onto the land, walking on lakes conjured by temporary magic. Their presence bent the air, soured the wind. And they looked at me like I was no longer one of them. You are summoned, one said, his voice thick with salt and scorn, to answer for the consequences of your exile. And Maisie stepped in front of me. She's not going any. The council member sneered. And this is the human you defied your people for? A boy. I stepped forward, trembling but unflinching. I'll leave him out of this. I'll come, alone. Maisie grabbed my hand. No, don't. But I looked at him with tears burning in my eyes. I have to. If I don't, they'll keep coming. They'll destroy this place. They'll destroy you. He kissed me, hard, desperate. Promise you'll come back. I nodded, but deep down, I didn't believe I would. Because this time, I was not going back to answer questions. I was going back to end something. The sea felt colder than I remembered. As I followed the council into the depths, I realized this wasn't a summons. It was a judgment. We passed through darkened waters where no light reached, past trenches I'd only heard whispered of in childhood tales. They weren't taking me back to the city. No glowing coral towers, no songs, no Alora. This was deeper, older, a place where rules were not spoken, only enforced. They brought me to a sunken ruin, an ancient arena carved into the bones of a long-dead leviathan. The walls pulsed with memories of pain, echoing with the groans of things once chained and punished. It reeked of silence and betrayal. Floating in the center was Rashid. His face was gaunt, his crown dimmed, his rage quiet but endless. You have fractured the balance, he said, voice sharp. You exposed us. You lived among them. I lived, I answered, not loud but clear. And I loved. Rashid's eyes narrowed. Then let love defend you. The trial was not a trial. There were no advocates, no questions. Just accusations poured from the mouths of those who never knew me, who had only heard whispers of the girl who abandoned the sea. As she made contact with humans, as she shared our secrets, as she returned after exile, as she threatens the old peace, each voice struck me like a tide. I wanted to scream, to tell them I had only ever sought the truth, but no one was listening until she came. Alora. She entered like a wave crashing through silence. Her fins shimmered, her eyes ablaze. She threatens nothing, she said, gliding forward. She is what we created, what you allowed. She defied exile, one elder snapped. She returned for love, Alora countered. Can any of you say the same? When did we become so small that we fear a girl who feels? The court fell into murmurs. She is human, Rashid said bitterly. She is more, Alora replied. She carries both our blood and their spirit. She is the bridge we feared for centuries, and she is the only one who still believes we can be better. Well, they couldn't argue with that, but they didn't have to. Rashid raised his hand. The penalty remains. Death. It was unspoken, but known. My lungs tightened. The water around me grew heavy. I reached for the necklace, Alora's final gift. It pulsed like a heartbeat. I closed my eyes. If this was how it ended, then I would die with the memory of sunlight on my skin, of Maisie's arms around me, of Alora's lullaby, of the choice I made, not in fear, but in love. And then The water exploded with light. A voice echoed louder than the ocean. It wasn't Elora. It wasn't Rashid. It was the sea itself, a force ancient and unseen, older than crowns and courts and fears. Enough. Every fin stilled, every mouth silenced. The light burned through the dark, revealing something deep inside the bones of the ruin. A vision. A memory. The wreck of the ship. My mother's hands, my father's tears, my cries echoing through water. Elora's embrace. This child belongs not to the sea or the land, the voice said, but to both. Her heart carries storms. Let her choose. And then it faded. The court trembled. Even Rashid could not speak. I turned to Elora, then to the elders. I've already chosen. And then I turned toward the surface. I left them behind. They did not stop me. When I broke through the waves, I gasped. The air welcomed me like an old friend. And Maisie was there waiting on the shore, soaked, shaking, eyes wide with disbelief. You came back, he whispered. I always would. He ran to me, caught me in his arms, and we collapsed onto the sand, tangled in salt and tears and something deeper than either world had ever offered. Later, we made a home by the coast. Some days I'd swim far and whales would sing to me. Some nights I'd lie on the shore and swear I could hear Elora humming beneath the tide. I was never fully of the land. I was never entirely of the sea. But I was whole. And sometimes that is more than enough.